Okay, so it turns out we're going to have two videos about the ruffler. We started out with this guy here, which is part number 26156, and it's the one that came with my machine in its attachments box. So you might recall that it ruffled, but it wasn't a very ruffly ruffle. Um, I was a little bit disappointed in the results from it, to be entirely honest. So one of the things is like as this moves up and down, this top plate here jabs underneath, and honestly, it recreates something that's more like a knife pleat than a true ruffle. But even though I had it set, at least part of the time, on the deepest ruffles it could give me, it did not really give me very good ruffles at all. After some deliberation and looking at it and playing with it, I think the problem is how much of a gap there is here. That I think it just isn't. I don't know necessarily that it's broken, but it's probably very worn out. And I started thinking to myself, man, if I had another one of these things, then I could test it out, see how it works, see what's different and what's not, and probably have a better idea of why this guy didn't give me very good ruffles to begin with. And I thought, actually, I could have a second one if I really wanted. But then I thought, if I was gonna buy a second one, I actually wanted one of this type, which has a few more things to play around with. Though I will say that upon first inspection, do you see how close these two are together? It works on the same principle, right? Of this moving, this arm moving and then it jabbing under. But can you see the difference between how tight those plates are? Because it works under the same type of mechanism, even though this guy has a bit more options to it. So, well, I decided I was going to buy another one. I got on eBay. I got a really good deal on this guy, and it is the version that I wanted to try. So this one, this one is part number 120598, and while I tried to figure out, when this version of the ruffler first came into being, I couldn't get a 100% straight answer, though I did find out that this version of the ruffler was in attachment kits that went with Singer machines as early as 1933. So, I mean, there's no way for me to know exactly when either of these particular rufflers, like this individual one and this individual one, were actually made. But I can pretty confidently say that this guy is newer than this guy. I am very sure of that. Although I'm not necessarily claiming that this guy is one from 1933 necessarily, just the version of the ruffler that this one happens to be, part number. So he works under the same sort of mechanical principle as this guy. There are a couple differences. One of them being that, so this one has this dial here that I showed you before, and this, if it's all the way down, it gives you a deep ruffle. If it's all the way up, I think all the way up is the neutral position, but the higher it is, the shallower the ruffle itself is. This guy has the same adjustment, but it's in the way of this screw here on top. This guy ruffles, or is supposed to ruffle, at every stitch and does not, as far as I am aware, have a way to change that. This one has this handy dandy little thing here. So this one, it's set on, you can see it says 1, 6, 12, and star. So the number 1 is it's going to ruffle every stitch. The 6 is 1 ruffle every 6 stitches. The 12 is 1 ruffle every 12 stitches, and the star is the neutral. So it will not give you any ruffles at all on the star setting. All right, so I also pointed out that it is quite a bit tighter here, which is where I think the problem with this one came, that it just didn't have enough tension to shove that fabric under and give me a decent ruffle. This one looks a whole lot more tight, so that's good. So is what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you how this one works, and hopefully also we will see more of what I expected out of this guy. So just like the first time, we'll go ahead and attach this guy on. I had already taken my previous foot off. You want to thread your top thread through first before you put him on. He goes on the same as the other guy with the fork here. You can see the fork going over the knob, and then this coming around the base bar. Give me a second while I get that screwed in. All right, and we're tightened down. I'm going to clear the decks a little bit, so I've got room to work. Ooh. All right. First thing is we'll go ahead and use like a small scrap here, and it's set at the number 1 right now, so it should ruffle on every stitch. Press your foot down. All right, and I'm going to give this a twirl. Right, we're going to switch over to my star setting, just to give it a little bit of neutral for a few stitches. It would help if I actually did that for a change. All right, come on, guy. Go. And we'll change that setting again. We'll go 1 every 6. And then we'll go ahead and go straight to 12. That is very much more like what I had expected of the other ruffler foot. Come on out. All right, so we have a actually rather nice and tight ruffle here for the 1-to-1, your neutral setting, your 1-to-6, and 1-to-12. Just because, you know, I actually tested this one ahead of time just to make sure I didn't have any other issues. I'll show you the slightly larger samples. So here's your 1-to-1. So a ruffle at every stitch. Here's your 1-to-6. I actually really like how that looks, and how it looks a little bit more like pleats than it does ruffle. And then obviously your neutral, and then there's the 1-to-12. Pretty cool, huh? So just for funsies, we will also give another try at the ruffling alongside sewing option that we did on the previous one. So the thicker fabric, oh, by the way, this again is linen, and this one's like a linen cotton mix. This one is a little bit heavier fabric than this guy. So we're going to do this the way we did before. Nope, my thread came out. That's okay, you can fix it. Yeah, I was a bit disappointed in the performance of the first one. I really think that it was the lack of tension in those plates that have made the difference. This one, I feel like it works pretty brilliantly though. It's regular, you know, the stitches themselves are at the correct intervals the way they should, and they look really nice. You know, let's see if we can adjust this knob since I've got him off anyway. It's a little bit tight. Let's see. See if it gives us a little bit of a different look. So one of the other things about these machines, there, you see I lifted that knob up a little bit, so we should have a little bit shallower stitches this time around. And we'll just do that to see how it looks. One of the other things about these machines are for additional adjustment to a foot like this one is, so if you, this here is the stitch length knob over here. So if I wanted, say, a one-to-one ruffle, but not quite that dense perhaps, I could change my stitch length to a longer stitch length, and that would, you know, effectively give me a one-to-one, but it would still be a little bit looser. I actually really like the stitch length on this machine as it's set right now, and if I change the stitch length, then I might also have to change the tension, and that leads you into basically a whole lot of falling dominoes and trying to rejigger the machine, and so I'm not going to mess with that. But that is another way that you can have essentially some more options, right, with a foot like this. Right, so we're going to try this whole sewing and ruffling all in one action, if I can get things lined up here. So come on, trying to pull that pink in there. The non-ruffling fabric is the one that's underneath the bottom plate, and then the ruffly fabric, you know, what you do want to ruffle, is the one that goes on top. I'm trying my best to line up the edges here. I didn't pin anything, so it might be a little bit kooky, but we're going to give it a shot. So press our foot down, see what happens. Let's change to a 1. Well, not too terribly impressed with that action. So let's try lowering that knob back down. Let's see. Well, I guess the first thing I could say is that I was right about it, that being the, this knob here being the bit that controls the depth, but I think I must have pulled it up so much that it just didn't want to do anything. It did at first, but so clearly any one of these type of rufflers are a little bit finicky. But if I were actually sewing something, look how nice that looks, huh? So you can actually ruffle and sew to a piece of fabric at the exact same time. Here's on the back side in case you're curious. Yeah. Way, way, way more useful than the other version. Alright. So if y'all happen to have any questions or anything like that, feel free to post for me. I hope you have enjoyed this edition of the Ruffler Part 2 with the Singer Model 27, and I hope y'all have a great day.